Sweep Spot
is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network.
MicePod.com. Now, the magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Oh, it is going, Lynn. It is going. I am happy to be here. Looking forward to this show.
Great. I'm glad you're able to be here. Not that you wouldn't be, but this is episode 282.
What?
282.
I'm just so amazed by that. I'm just staying at home these days.
I know. It's shocking, right? Welcome. Ken and I are both former Disneyland custodial cast members, and we talk about Disneyland. We are also authors of the books. We have 2 books out, Cleaning the Kingdom. I'm sure you've heard us talk about these many times, but you can get them wherever books are found. You can I have like 2 more copies of the first book, I think.
That are signed.
That are signed. And then I have
Yeah.
enough of the second book that are signed too. So if you want those, go to our website, thesweetspot.com, and you can order those today. You can order both of them and get a deal, or either one, and there's 2 different shipping options for the individual ones. And if you have a request, like to have it signed to you or someone you're getting it for, you can just email me at thesweetspot@gmail.com and just say, hey, I just ordered a book, and can you have it signed to so-and-so? Or I could even put in there happy birthday or whatever you want. So that's that. Also, we have a Patreon page on Patreon, Patreon, and we do once a month, we do a bonus episode. We just recorded this month's, and we hope to have it out this week sometime. It was a really fun conversation, so if you'd like to hear these, it's just go over to our website, and I believe it's $5 or more a month, and you get the bonus episode.
Yay!
So if you don't want to use Patreon or don't know what that is or whatever, want another way to send the $5, you can go to our website, thesweetspot.com, and on there I have a link for PayPal, and you can pay like however you pay through PayPal, like credit card, checking account, or your like if you have PayPal balance, you can do that.
Yeah.
Those are really fun though. So if you want more content from us, that's one way. There is another way that is fairly new now. We have a YouTube channel called The Sweep Spot Podcast, I believe it is. And if you want to, we'd really like to if we can get everyone that listens to our podcast to subscribe, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So please do that, because what it will do is then you'll get notifications, or when you go to your YouTube app and you click on subscriptions, it'll show all the latest videos, and also it helps us out a lot. So if you could subscribe, and then when you watch a video, we have done 2 live streams so far, and I think we'll do maybe, we'll see, we may do another one next week. But
Yeah.
during this coronavirus, we're doing more than we probably normally will in the future. I think we'll probably do
Right.
one a month, but right now we're trying to do on the weeks that we don't record the podcast, we're hoping to do live streams. So
Yes.
I'm also putting on there some of our more popular episodes from the past, and it's just the audio, but some people like if they're sitting at their desktop and they want to run YouTube or whatever, you can hear the audio from that, and that's on our YouTube channel also. I just uploaded one that was like episode 29 or something, so it was pre-Ken, but I wanted to include it because it was an important. It was a great interview we had with Rolly Crump, so I wanted to include that. But yes, please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then when you watch a video or listen, give it a thumbs up because that also helps us too. All right. Also mention the website.
Did somebody sign up on Patreon or up their
amount?
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me, Ken. So we also had an upgrade on our Patreon, and that is Bob Thomas. Bob Thomas.
Oh, I like Bob's. I like Bob's work.
Yeah.
Good job, Bob. Bob Thomas. Yes.
He upgraded from $7.49 to $10. So thank you so much, Bob. We appreciate you. Yes, we appreciate you. So anyways, check everything out on our website. And also, this episode tonight is kind of a unique one. I mean, we've had people that have worked at WED Enterprise or Imagineering that are, worked on projects. But we have someone that worked in Disneyland and also worked at WED. So in a different role that we have never talked to anyone. We have Melissa Rohn, and she was a research analyst for WED Enterprises in the late 70s, early 80s. So a very unique time. I'm excited to ask her questions, about some of the people that worked with Walt that she was able to interact with. So really looking forward to that interview. So don't miss that. And let's just get right into it. But before we do that, we're going to have the current event. Okay, up next we're going to have the current events. Ken, what do you have for us?
Well, Lynn, there's some stuff to talk about.
Really?
It's unavoidable that we're going to talk about COVID-19 and, quarantines and shutdowns and all that sort of thing. But if you want to skip over that, I understand. But before you do, the things you should know, there's a couple things. One is Marvel reveals Spider-Man comic based on Web Slingers ride coming to Adventures Campus. Okay. Now, granted, this is a story back from March 30th in the Orange County Register. It says a new Spider-Man comic from Marvel will offer the first glimpse of what riders can expect aboard the Web Slingers attraction coming to Adventures Campus once Disney California Adventure reopens after the COVID-19 pandemic. The first issue of the Web of Spider-Man comic series, debuting in June, will feature a storyline based on the new interactive dark ride. And the article here says, set to open in Anaheim, in the Anaheim theme park on July 18th, which is probably no longer the case, but we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. The new Web Slingers dark ride coming to Adventures Campus will use gesture recognition technology that will track the body and eye movements of riders as they sling virtual webs from their wrists. So, Now, if they're tracking your eye movement, how soon are they going to install that in the stores so they can track your eye movements in the stores and they can figure out how to make it more likely you'll buy something?
Good question.
So, yeah. So that's and something else I wanted to mention was, the newspaper was very excited that they filed a permit to redo the Frontierland entrance for $200,000. We'll get to that, but those are if you want to skip over because you just can't stand to listen to any more about the virus. I mean, it's unavoidable that we have to talk about it because it's having a huge impact on Disneyland. It's having an impact on all venues. So sorry, but we just got to talk about it. If you want to skip over to the main portion of the show, you can certainly do that. I won't be offended. Now, the late breaking news is that Disney delays opening of new Marvel's Avengers Campus amid coronavirus shutdown. This is an article that was late breaking here. And as they say, the Disneyland website that once proclaimed Avengers Campus would be opening July 18th now said that the new Marvel-themed land is coming soon. And that's to be expected. I mean, if they've halted construction and all the other preparatory work that they would normally do, operating it, testing it, I would imagine construction had to be nearing an end already. But if you've got to train on it, you've got to, test run it. And so all that stuff has gotten pushed back, and nobody really knows for certain when things will pick up again. So that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and my chat also covered that. With delayed Disneyland Avengers Campus opening officially pushed back, as Dusty Sage reports, it says it comes as no surprise that language regarding the opening of the Marvel-themed Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure has been changed from July 18th to coming soon on the Disneyland website. All work on Avengers Campus and all other construction projects at the Disneyland Resort have been suspended due to direction from health and government officials. As a result, all projects are delayed, including the highly anticipated Avengers Campus. Now, some of you listening might not be in a place where you have as many restrictions, but let me tell you, the restrictions in the greater Los Angeles area you're talking about, you're not supposed to go, you're supposed to stay home unless you need to do some grocery shopping or go to the doctor or, something like that. You're supposed to stay home or make a drive-through at a restaurant or a pickup at a restaurant, but you're not supposed to dine in, you can still go to laundromats, I think. Laundromats. But you're supposed to wear masks, and just all this. It's highly restricted right now. Hopefully, I can listen back to this episode later and just go, "Wow, what a strange time that was." Now there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen with the various employees of Disney, because if you're not bringing in the revenue, what are you going to do? You can't just continue to pay people like you are getting revenue. So there was a recent article, Disneyland reaches furlough agreements with 10 unions. And so this was another Brady McDonald story in the Register. Disneyland has reached agreements with 10 unions on a temporary furlough triggered by the continuing closure of the Anaheim theme park during the COVID-19 pandemic. The agreement on a furlough beginning April 19th was reached with unions representing food and beverage workers, pyrotechnicians, sound mechanics, stage managers, stage technicians, and other employees at the Disneyland Resort. Let's see here. It says that this will maintain members' health insurance benefits coverage, educational support, and additional employee assistance programs during a temporary furlough effective April 19th. So, yeah, there's been a lot of work going on. And as with all the stories that I'm going to talk about here, you can go to thesweepspot.com. You can click through and read the rest of the stories. I think some of these newspapers have temporarily lifted their subscription requirements online. I think if there's anything to do with the pandemic, the story will not count. Like you can read the story even if you're not a subscriber. That might be, your mileage may vary on that. But at the end of that story, it says Disneyland employees, known as cast members in Disney parlance, will continue to be paid through April 18th during the closures of the parks. Disney recently announced that executives would take temporary pay cuts of 20 to 30%, with the company's top leaders taking even deeper salary reductions. And Mice Chat actually had a story. Is updated, Disney reaches furlough agreement with unions, and as they point out, it is important to note that those employees who currently have medical plans through the company will keep those plans. The same is true for the Disney Aspire program, which pays for employees to attend college while employed with the company. Those participants will remain in Aspire while they are furloughed so that they may continue their educations. There was a previous story in the Orange County Register from Brady that Disneyland reaches furlough agreement with union employees. I think these are different. Let's see. The agreement on a furlough beginning April 19th was reached with the Independent Employee Service Association that represents Disneyland security employees. So, Disney has to make all these agreements with various unions. It's not like all one fell swoop. So it gets pretty complicated. Because there had been an article all the way back earlier that said, back on April 3rd, that said, Disneyland union leaders remain in talks with the company. That was, that gives you an example. They've been talking about it. And they finally announced something, on the 9th and the 10th of April. But as they point out in that article, Disneyland's union employees make up at least 28,000 of the 31,000 cast members at the 2 Anaheim theme parks. So when you talk about, there's roughly a few thousand, I guess, that you would consider management that don't fall into union coverage. So, earlier, there was an article, Disney furloughs non-essential employees at U.S. theme parks, to give you an example. That was back on April 2nd. Now, here's a specific example of something, okay? Disneyland All-American Band suspends 50th anniversary season due to COVID-19 pandemic. Wow. That's the All-American College Band that plays during the summer at Disneyland. As they point out in the article, since 1971, the All-American College Band has performed in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle, along Main Street, USA, and in Disneyland's Town Square. Band members are selected from 300 plus applicants each year from colleges across the United States. The hands-on training is designed to prepare the band members for careers in the music industry. That has to be disappointing, especially there's probably a bunch of people who have seen that band and said, I'd like to do that someday. And they've been in college, they've been waiting for their opportunity to audition for this. So that's got to be highly disappointing. Because can you imagine, I'm going to get in that band and I'm going to go to Disneyland for the summer, and maybe I can meet some of the musicians that are there, full time. And it's disappointing. It really is. And we know they've done, they entered the college program. they sent everybody home from that. It's much bigger at Walt Disney World than it is Disneyland. And then, of course, Walt Disney World also has the international representatives from the different countries that are at World Showcase, and a bunch of those have had to go home. So it's really highly disruptive for people's plans. Now, here's another example of something particular that was delayed. Disney California Adventure Post sold out Villains Night due to the coronavirus closure. The separate admission Villains Night event, scheduled for April 30th at Disney California Adventure, was expected to feature a cabaret-style musical review with Disney's most famous bad guys and gals. So, Villains Night has been postponed. Disneyland halts annual pass holder payments during coronavirus closure. This is another Brady McDonald story from the Register. Disneyland will halt annual pass payments for pass holders who have paid for a full year and those on the monthly payment plan while the Anaheim theme park remains closed amid the pandemic. Disneyland had angered pass holders by continuing to charge its most diehard fans who use the annual pass monthly payment plan and refusing to defer payments while the Anaheim theme parks remain closed. The policy change seeks to undo the potential damage to the company's cherished brand loyalty. Disneyland pass holders who have paid in full for their annual passes can receive a partial refund for the theme park closure period. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I remember the monthly payments were done basically to make it easier for people. Mm-hmm. The only option you used to have is you had to pay for the full year up front. That was it. And then, as the price of the passes went up and up and up, they said, okay, you can make monthly payments at no extra charge. So, and it says right there in the fine print that you can't, that they're not responsible. I mean, it says right, and that's one of the things they mentioned in the stories is that, but from a PR standpoint, when there's a bunch of people have lost their jobs and Disney's still taking out monthly payments, granted, Disney was going to extend their expiration dates. So it wasn't like Disney was going to charge them and then they weren't going to be able to get any use out of it. But still, if you're having trouble, if you can't go right now and you're going to have trouble paying your bills, it just seems, I still have to pay for it. But they said payments will resume on the pass holders' regularly scheduled payment dates once the parks reopen, according to Disneyland website. And so a previous story had chronicled the anger of this sort of thing, and we will have these stories linked. Disneyland pass holders angry that company keeps billing them during the closure. And they said in that story, Disneyland pass holders are outraged that Disney continues to charge its most diehard fans who use the annual pass monthly payment plan and won't defer payments while the Anaheim theme parks remain closed. Annual passports, which offer year-round access to the parks on select days, range in price from the $419 for the select annual pass with the most blackout days to the $1,449 Signature Plus Pass that provides unlimited access to Disney's Anaheim theme parks. Disneyland raised prices on its annual passes in February to $649 for the Flex Pass, $829 for the Deluxe Pass, and $1,199 for the Signature Pass. Disneyland will extend the expiration dates for pass holders who have annual passes that are valid during the continuing closure. Pass holders on the monthly plan will continue to make their scheduled payments and will not be required to make any payments during the extended period. Remember, this is an old story, so that's all, they don't have to pay that anymore. But it does say here, the fine print in the annual pass contract clearly states Disneyland is not liable for park closures, which is kind of interesting because what if Disneyland had just I mean, this was. They really had no choice. Disney had no choice in this matter. They had to close down. I suppose there could be scenarios where Disney decides to close down. They don't have to. And how can they not be responsible for that? But anyway, that's the contract that you signed. And but thankfully, like we said, the payments, you can stop the payments right now. And Mice Chat actually covers that too. They have a story: Disneyland and Walt Disney World halt annual passport monthly payments. Now, the Orange County Register pointed out that hotels near Disneyland are taking reservations, but only for June 1st and after. Now, granted, this story comes from March 30th, so it might have changed because I know Los Angeles. Los Angeles is saying they're going to make everybody stay home until like May 15th. And so, I don't know, things could change. As they point out in the story, though, new reservations for the Disneyland Hotel, Disney's Grand Californian Hotel, and Disney's Paradise Pier Hotel are currently available for travel dates on June 1st and later, according to the Disneyland website. So, with any luck, they'll be able to keep that, but we'll see. Disneyland crowds expected to bounce back after the closure, analysts say. Now, this is back from April 1st, and it says, Disneyland is expected to see an initial reduction in attendance after reopening before bouncing back with higher than usual crowd levels, according to new data from theme park analysts. Touring Plans, which uses big data and statistical analysis to calculate daily crowd sizes and ride wait times at theme parks, projects that Disneyland will rebound from the coronavirus closure within 2 months and see a surge in attendance as visitors reschedule canceled vacations. So, as they do go on to say in the article, basically, this is unprecedented. So nobody knows for sure what the heck will happen. I mean, I would imagine Disneyland is going to have a lot of annual pass holders come back right away, but I don't know about more. If people have to plan a whole vacation, there's a lot of people who just simply, they lost their jobs, or they lost their income, or they lost their entire business. And it's not going to be easy for them to book expensive vacations. So, sure, maybe the local annual pass holders will come flooding back. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who just simply can't take a big Disney vacation for a while. We'll see. I mean, you can't. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that have been closed down. There's a lot of people who aren't getting paid what they would normally get paid. Touring Plans has modeled a series of scenarios with a variety of opening dates from late April and early June to the beginning of July and August. The attendance recovery patterns remain consistent with park reopenings that begin in April, which is not going to happen, May or June, but trouble arises if Disneyland's reopening gets pushed into the late summer. The Touring Plans data shows. I hope it doesn't get to the point where they just say, you know what, we shouldn't have taken out the Haunted Mansion. We should have left the holiday stuff in there, because by the time they reopen, they're not going to have time to just think about it. Of course, Disney officials don't cooperate with stories like that because they don't talk about their attendance. Okay, so Disneyland might check your temperature before letting you in after the shutdown. That was just something. It's funny because Bob Iger said something, and then they take it as, well, this might happen. But I think, sometimes I think this is just This is one of many possibilities we're exploring. And they take it like, oh, this could happen. It says here in the article, Disney Executive Chairman Bob Iger discussed how security precautions at Disney theme parks could change after the coronavirus crisis in an interview with Barron's. Just as we now do bag checks for everybody that goes into our parks, it could be that at some point we add a component that takes people's temperatures as for instance, Iger told Barron's. So
I bet he regrets saying that.
Yeah. Well, I want to know what kind of thermometer they're going to use. Hey ho. Anyway, sorry, folks. No, but I could
your
see.
brain.
I could see how many people are going to voluntarily show up with gloves and masks.
And will they allow that?
You get
right?
You get mouse masks, and you get Mickey gloves, and But
will they allow masks? Because they wouldn't. I don't think they allowed masks before.
No, they wouldn't. Another thing about it, though, is people are like, well, I don't want to go through security bag check and have these people touching my stuff. So some people are saying, well, it's just time for them to get X-ray machines, But
Or don't go.
Or maybe if you have if your bags are clear. See, you could have clear bags and then put a cover over them after you get through security. I mean, that's certainly a possibility. Why not? So Mice Chat also picked up on that story, and they say Disney theme parks may conduct temperature checks on guests. So you can read that if you want to. And here's what I was mentioning earlier. Disneyland plans $200,000 renovation of Frontierland Gate when park reopens after the closure. Now,
that's not much money.
Yeah, when you're talking about California, $200,000 is like a bathroom renovation in a house. Okay.
So they're going to paint the sign.
Yeah, they're going to. Well, it says here Disneyland plans a $200,000 renovation on the Frontierland entrance designed to improve pedestrian traffic flow after the Anaheim theme park reopens. They keep. I think they get paid by how many times they mention the words coronavirus closure. Like every story has that. So I think there's like it's like the secret phrase where if you say that, you get extra points. But anyway, so a building permit filed with the city of Anaheim before the coronavirus closure of the park calls for the replacement of a pair of 15-foot tall faux wooden gates and a 16-foot long marquee, along with the widening of an existing bridge at the Frontierland entrance, according to public records. An aerial video taken by Disney-owned ABC in Los Angeles shortly after Disneyland closed due to the coronavirus outbreak showed visible work on the hub entrance leading to Frontierland, where brick pavers had been removed from the walkway. Work on the brick walkway around the hub has been halted, along with other construction and refurbishment projects at Disneyland and Disney California Adventure. The curb lowering work around the park central hub is part of the continuing Project Stardust initiative that widened walkways, shrunk planters, and reduced curbing throughout the park. Yeah. Speaking of aerial shots, they had a couple of articles. Leave it to a newspaper to have articles about video, but anyway, aerial video shows Disneyland Castle, Matterhorn Mountain, and Galaxy's Edge during coronavirus closure. Ding, 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 ding. So you can click through if you want to read about that. And also another article, aerial video and photos show eerie Disneyland ghost town during coronavirus closure. They should go over to Knott's and they can say, look, ghost town's a ghost town. But by the way, something else I wanted to mention about Knott's, when you talk about pass holders, Knott's sent out a message saying, guess what? Your passes See, Knott's sells their annual passes from a January to December basis. If you get one in February, it still ends in December. But they said that your passes for 2020 are going to be good for 2021. So that's pretty cool. Can you imagine if Disney made an announcement like that? Not likely, I'll tell you. Anyway, we'll have an actual link. You can go to the source of these videos. Because I was actually at another website, so you can click through for that. We'll have that link. MiceChat.com is still posting updates. They had one Disneyland news update, the storm before the calm. And that was from Dusty Sage. And as they point out, for the health and safety of its cast members and contractors, all projects in the parks have been suspended. The parks are currently being maintained and protected by a very small core group of essential employees. Security is the largest crew and responsible for making sure that the entire Disneyland Resort area is locked down and that only essential staff are on site. Disneyland Fire Department is also maintaining a presence, although none of the construction, refurbishments, or maintenance is going on. There are still a number of folks from various departments making sure that the parks remain in good condition. Horticulture is watering plants and maintaining gardens. Maintenance is making sure that water filtration, refrigerators, electrical, and other essential facilities remain functional. Chefs show up from time to time to make sure that food, which can be stored, is maintained within acceptable parameters. A handful of custodial staff continues to clean everything. And with the core crew in the parks working, there needs to be first aid as well. But essentially, the park looks and feels empty. So it's kind of like when we would do utility, you know.
Yeah.
And there was another MiceChat.com update. Disneyland update tomorrow is another day. So that's also by Dusty. So again, go to thesweepspot.com, check the current event show notes. You can find all of those stories and click through to read wherever you want to read more about. You might want to count out the number of times it says coronavirus closure. And that could be an interesting drinking game. But, eventually this stuff will come back. And we want you to keep in mind, you're going to want to eventually take another Disney getaway vacation. And so when that time comes, you really want to, in fact, you can consult with them now if you'd like to. Concierge.com. CONCIEARS.com. You can check with concierge.com. They are your Disney getaway vacation planners. They know what's happening. They'll handle all the heavy lifting for you. It's not going to cost you any more money than it would otherwise. All it's going to do is reduce your stress and get you things you might not even were aware were possible. So that they did that with my own mother. I sent her to concierge. They took care of her and told her things that she wouldn't have known otherwise. So it's great. Contact concierge.com for your getaway vacation planning needs. They know Disney. That's all they focus on. Walt Disney World, Disney's Aulani in Hawaii, Disney Cruise Line, or Adventures by Disney. Go ahead and check with concierge.com. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ken. So, Melissa, how did you come to work at Disneyland?
Well, I was in graduate school. I was getting a master's degree in economics. My husband was in dental school at UCLA. I was a graduate student. We had loans, but we had absolutely no money. So, just before the holiday Halloween in 19 '77, I think it was. I saw an ad in my university newspaper that Disneyland was doing holiday hiring. So I decided that I would add that to my list of things to do. Went in and I interviewed. I had been, as an undergraduate, a bank teller.
Oh.
So while my sister was at Disneyland in attractions and doing all kinds of fun stuff, I got hired in cash control.
Oh.
And I counted many, many millions of dollars.
I bet.
So that's how I actually started with the company. Cash control is an interesting gig. At the time, it was the era of heavy double knit costumes. Ours was Dayglow Gold. So as you're walking across the park carrying thousands of dollars and you're trying to be unobtrusive, it was really quite difficult.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we were the only ones allowed to say, no, I'm sorry, I cannot stop and take your picture. That cast member there will help you as you keep walking.
Ah.
So it was a unique circumstance. The only time we actually were escorted, if we picked up Main Gate, which was tens of thousands of dollars, we actually had a security guard with a golf cart who would take us from, the old ticket kiosks, from kiosk to kiosk, and then back to cash control to count the money, and then the money would go to the Bank of America on Main Street.
Wow.
So that's where I started, and it was most interesting.
Was cash
But I
control?
was not sad to leave.
Well, Ken and I are both former cast members, but was cash control behind Space Mountain at that time?
It was in the old building, kind of downstairs and down a little bit from the old locker room, the original locker room.
Okay.
That's where my lockers were.
Okay.
And it had the front room, which is where cast members would bring their receipts and drop them off. Mm-hmm. And then we had a room of desks where there were phones, and then there was kind of a vault room with money counters, and then in the very back was where we counted money, and they were kind of almost like little booths.
Yeah.
And then there was a change counter in the back that would just dump the change, and only the guys did the change counting because the girls' costumes had ties, and if they got caught in the change counter, it'd probably pull your head in. So we didn't ever use the change counter. And in those big booths, we would just count money, and we didn't have calculators. That was like pre-10 key.
Mm-hmm.
I could run a full key calculator, but we didn't have them. You had to do all your addition and your balancing by hand. And then we'd have stacks and stacks and stacks of bundled money. And the one summer, I actually only worked in cash control for about a year before I moved on, but I worked graveyard that summer, which left everybody kind of giddy. And we would have some epic rubber band fights behind those stacks of money all the time.
Yeah. I bet.
Oh my gosh! Now, did Disneyland took credit cards back then, or?
Oh yes, they did, but it was it was the kind where they put it in the hand rolled machine, and then they rolled the thing over it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they were only allowed to actually just accept a certain amount. Over that amount of money, they had to call cash control, and then whoever was working phones in the office would call and get approval, which is interesting because I did get a call for a guest who was making a very large purchase, Mr. E. John, whose credit card was approved. So I called him back and said, yeah, Elton's okay. You can let him have it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, see now, I mean, there's so many, everything's so electronic now. And there's so many credit cards and there's debit cards and there's, you can pay out with your phone now, Apple Pay and all that stuff that, people who, some of the younger generations really just have no idea just how much cash was actually changing hands at the park back then,
It was huge. What was huge then, $1 million nights, as just on our graveyard shift we'd be counting $1 million, which doesn't sound all that much now, but you have to remember what the prices were then.
Yeah.
You could get in for $10.75 or something, and there was a lot of money going through. It was such a volume of bills that it was actually kind of a popular place for people to come in and pass counterfeits. And they would get past the cashiers because, they weren't really familiar. But you could tell when it was happening because all of a sudden, all of us back in cash control were counting and then go, oh, because they feel wrong. So,
yeah.
And it's like, oh, God, okay, send the word out. They're passing 20s or whatever it is. And,
wow.
Yeah.
And that was another curious, the curious experience, the dog who barked in the night, passing counterfeits.
And you weren't loading up any. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the other thing that you would not expect as a means to balance at the end of the night. I don't know if you're aware, but different denominations of bills are made with different paper and have a different weight. So if we got to the end of our shift and we didn't balance, we would take those bundles of money, and they were bundled in certain denominations. And there was a very highly calibrated machine that we could weigh them on. And they would misweigh if you, for example, accidentally put a 5 in the 20s or something like that. So, you could calculate how you're off, and there's mathematical variations that will tell you that, you messed up, you put a 5 in the 20s or something. And you can find it by weighing it, which is what we did.
That's such a unique job. I mean, we've had many customers on the show, but we've never had anyone that was in cash control, but yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about custodial is we never did that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you were out in the sunshine and the fresh air.
Yeah.
We were in a dark room unless we were doing a cash pickup if I was working swing, we were emptying the 3 arcades that were in existence then, the Main Street Arcade, the Tomorrowland Arcade, and the Bear Country Arcade.
Oh, yeah.
Which involved crawling around on the floor and dumping the tins that were at the bottom of the machines into a bag. Or sometimes, there was one adventure that was always fun, and that's picking up the money at the Heidi. Disney owned the Heidi Motel. And that would involve actually checking out a little truck and driving to the Heidi Motel. So I got out of the back room.
Wow. Little adventure.
It was. That was the adventure.
Yeah, that's people. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that a couple of those hotels along Catella that Disney actually owned, and those little motels that were kind of built on the same piece of property as the parking lot. Yeah, that was interesting. So you could collect the cash from there. But you didn't actually have to fill up any suitcases full of cash and leave it in a special place, did you?
Oh, heavens, no. No, who would I be buying off for what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay.
No, because you had to balance at the end of the shift. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. It's. I was glad that we didn't have to handle any cash because, I didn't want anybody accusing me of shortchanging them or anything like that. The only time we ever actually handled cash is if somebody dropped a wallet or dropped some money, and then we would have to follow all the procedures to take it to lost and found and all that. Now, the women in custodial, if they had restrooms, there's just small amounts of money because of machines in there for the women. And we actually did have somebody, I think, who got busted for that. They were this individual was very shady, and she got busted. You're not talking large amounts of money. It's like you're really going to you're actually going to risk your job over quarters, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's But other than that, we never had to handle anything. So I felt that was a low stress point for us.
Well, the
how long were you?
Stressful. It was dirty paper.
Yeah.
How long was I?
Nowadays,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was in cash control probably not quite a year.
Mm-hmm.
I started just before Christmas, and then by about that time the next year, I had interviewed at WED, and then I had gone to WED.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
78.
78. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was
oh, wow.
just before Christmas, 78. So that was
they were probably
Epcot and TDL.
Yeah, gearing up for Epcot, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had finished my master's degree, and they had actually written an article about it in the Disneyland line. And, looking for articles wherever you can find them. And I don't know whether that had gotten to WED or what, but I had an interview set up with Frank Stanek. And so I talked to him. Obviously, I had a background in research and then in analytics because of my master's is in economics. And I also, by that point, was teaching. I was a lecturer at Cal State Long Beach. I was teaching economics. I had one class that semester, maybe two. And so when I interviewed with him, we talked about, analysis and research and various odds and ends. And I explained that I had a class that I was obligated to teach and that I would have to leave, in time to leave from Glendale to get down to Long Beach to teach the class. And he was fine with that, although he did tell me that if I was going to do that, I had to teach him economics, which I don't think he ever found time for because he was a very, very busy man. And, between Epcot and TDL and running everything in his purview. But anyway, so they hired me as a research analyst, and I started out kind of just learning about Epcot and what it was anticipated to be, which was not like totally a hard and fast thing at that point. They were still looking at like Africa and some other things that they were hoping in the long run to be able to put in World Showcase. John and Marty had already pushed, the two models together of Future World and World Showcase, so that was kind of a done deal that was going to be the configuration. And we had the figure eight, and we had Communicore in the middle, and we had the major pavilions for Future World. And then World Showcase, they were still negotiating and trying to expand that to as many countries as they could. So unlike most of the Imagineers, most of my friends who would be assigned to a particular project or maybe two projects and they would follow it, to completion. Because I was a research analyst, I was really heavily on the front end of all kinds of odds and ends, some of them having to do with the park and some of them having to do with Disneyland, and some of them having to do over time with what became the Disney Channel, and then simple analysis of ride statistics and occupancy and things like that. What ultimately became Downtown Disney. So I never had a set group of people to work with, because I was never, except for the American Adventure, which I did follow through because I, over time, touched many of those scenes, either vetting the props or something. But all the other things that I worked on, it was kind of, I did this part, and then I moved to do something else because I was doing research. I wasn't actually involved in show set design or architectural design or interiors or something of that nature.
Okay.
So it was kind of a smattering of lots of stuff.
Maybe I was going to ask you to kind of explain, I mean, maybe pick maybe one job that you had, and maybe if you could think of one part of your job, maybe like just a description of your job during one of those projects. I'm just real curious. I know that the titles, I mean, obviously you did research, but like what did that entail, really?
Well, as I said, the most consistent work for me was American Adventure. Mm-hmm. Because there were lots of different aspects that I worked with. For example, the scene in the Depression when they're singing "Say Buddy, Can You Spare a Dime?" and they're at that little gas station out in the boonies, and it's also a general store, so there's signs and whatever. Well, I spent 3 weeks in a lab coat from the model shop in the very back of the library at WED with the Post and the Life and the Look, where the dust was as old as the magazines, which is why I was wearing the lab coat, looking through that period for advertisements and for prices of things. And so it took me 3 weeks to get to the designers all of the price data and the advertising type data so they could actually design that scene. So that was one scene. The submarine, the World War II scene. Before they even designed it, first of all, Randy Bright asked me if I wanted to try writing it, which I thought was really generous, but and I tried, but I am not a writer. I am an academic. So, it was kind, and I appreciated that, and I wish I could have been a writer because, it might have led to other things, but I wasn't. But they did ask me to find the submarine that was actually used in the Second World War that would be visually the least complex, so it would be the cleanest to build.
Right.
And then to identify it, or should it be identified, because obviously the submarines that were used in the Second World War are known. So I did my due diligence research, and this is actually a byproduct of a trip that I took to Washington, D.C., which I'll talk about in a few minutes, but I was able to do research in the Pentagon. And discovered that there were, 16 or 18, something like that, World War I submarines, which of course would be the simplest, that were still being used. They were patrolling in the Caribbean, and they were also being used as training subs. So I brought back, the photos of that for the designers to use. Also discovered that right after Pearl Harbor, the Navy, as quickly as they could, brought all their ships in, painted out all the identifying markers, and airbrushed it on all photographs. So the boat in the scene doesn't have any identification on it. There is a destroyer behind it that does, because it's in for its paint job, and a kind of byproduct of my discovery of that was to help the father of a friend of mine. He was a Pearl Harbor survivor. And he had always been very confused because he had raised the flags on his ship right before the Japanese bombed. But all the pictures he saw afterwards showed nothing. Well, the flags identified the ship. They were airbrushed out.
Oh.
So that relieved his mind many years later
Yeah.
to find that out. So, as I said, that came from a trip to Washington. I went to Washington with Steve Casper and Bob Allen from Disneyland from the, oh gosh, I've forgotten what their department was called, but they did photography and they worked with Van France. And we went to the Pentagon, we went to NASA, walked away with Hasselblad negatives. We went to the National Archives, went to the Library of Congress. And of course, you make an appointment ahead of time and you say that you're Disney, and you walk in and they say, "What do you want?" So that was for a researcher, that was like a gold experience, because the National Archives had furniture in the back room from the Harding administration, I swear. But the Pentagon, we were escorted into the Pentagon by a very upright young man to the library. We did our research, and then we said, "Well, we're done." And they said, "Okay, bye." And we looked at each other and went, "This is the largest building in the world. How are we getting out?" We did, obviously, but it was funny.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So,
The American Adventure, by the way, is one of the best. I mean, that's like, I think that still holds up as one of the best theme park attractions anywhere. So good job.
too. I love to visit, and I'll tell you my deep dark secret. Except my family rolls their eyes now because it's no longer a secret from them. The statues in the auditorium, they're all Imagineers. We posed
Really?
for Blaine, and the American Indian woman stage right up up front. That's me.
Uh-huh.
Very cool.
I thought so. Yeah, no. So you posed for Blaine Gibson.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And Herbie Ryman used to come and visit me. I have a illustrated booklet from his exhibit at the Pompidou Center in France.
Oh, nice.
And my art of animation book, that was written by Frank and Ollie. I took it around, and it is signed by many, many people on their artwork.
Wow, that's really neat. So you were there.
Ryman,
Yeah, you were there at just a unique time. Like, I mean, a lot of the people that worked with Walt Disney were still there. Like, you've mentioned some of these names, and then there was also some of the newer Imagineers coming on around that same time too. I know Tony Baxter was around then too.
Yes, Tony Baxter was down the hall around the corner. He was working on Big Thunder, I remember. Tom Morris was down around the corner.
Yeah.
He actually had started at Disneyland and trained my sister, and then came up to WED, and we figured out, hey, you knew my sister. That was kind of funny. Al Dallas, who just wrote Inventing Disneyland, he was my friend. We had a group of us that, I don't know, one crazy moment decided to enter the canoe races at Disneyland, which meant, getting to Glendale in the dark of the morning and then driving from Glendale down to Disneyland to race canoes and coming back. And needless to say, we didn't win. I think our average age was considerably greater than the guys in the parking lot who always won. But our T-shirts were designed by Ex Atencio.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah.
We didn't win, but we looked good.
So you had plenty of perks by working there and, getting to experience some of the attractions for the first time, too, I imagine.
I didn't actually get to go to the parks all that often.
Oh, no.
I saw them all in the model shop.
Oh, of course.
And
yeah.
I certainly did research trips in various places. Obviously, Washington. I went to the electronics convention in Chicago with a bunch of engineers. They were looking for new and novel for Communicore. Went up to San Francisco to do some research on the clippings from Mark Twain's literary tours to get some concept of what the critics said he sounded like. Went to the Glendale Library once, a lot. Went to the Burbank Library, went to our library, went to the studio library. Did a lot of phone calling, but I didn't really have a reason to go to the parks. So what I saw was conceptual more than anything.
Right. Which is really neat. I mean, you got to see some of the projects before they were even made.
And things that started and didn't go anywhere.
Right. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you able to? Mark Davis was there too, right? At that time.
Yes. Yes, he was.
And his wife Alice.
Yes, and some people I knew better than others.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a fair number of, I always thought of them as food meetings because they always had a big spread of food, but, there would be lots of important people and me because I was just, as I said, I had my finger in all kinds of little tabs. I wasn't important, but I had a role up front like all these other people did. So I got to know quite a few of the older guys and ladies, and particularly some of the people who were doing concept paintings, and then the guys who were doing the American Adventure paintings. If I found myself without a lot to do, or whatever I was doing was, I was waiting on something, I would go walk about, and I just walk around and see if anybody needed anything. So I got to know everybody pretty well. I got to know John Hench's secretary, and I were friends. And John was very nice. He used to tell stories. Oh, they would all tell stories. They would tell stories on each other, how somebody else got in trouble with Walt. But but John would let me go to Club 33 on his with my husband and our friends on his membership, and Webb provided art classes for the artists, and they were free, and you would just enroll. And I wasn't an artist, but I did love to crochet, as did John Hench's secretary. So having her ear was kind of a good thing because she had John's ear, and we got crocheting classes.
Oh, nice.
So we had the Wed crocheting classes.
Now, Herb Ryman, you talk about telling on other people. As I understand it, Herb Ryman liked to stick Colin Campbell in his paintings as a starving artist.
He stuck Colin Campbell and nuns. You'd often find nuns in Herbie's paintings. Yeah.
Really? I never heard that.
Yeah, I have quite a few Herbie prints. Yeah. He was charming. He was impish. I can remember him. He used to go walk about too, and he'd come and talk to me. And I can remember one day he must have felt the need for attention because he was wearing Vans and they were two different colors. And it was just man. Oh, Herbie. Oh, Herbie.
Now, I'm sure most of our listeners know who Herb Ryman is, but just in case anybody's listening who doesn't, he was the guy that Walt tapped to do a really famous rendering of Disneyland to try to sell the concept to some bankers and raise some funding for it. And they did that over a weekend. And then, he did artwork all the way up through like the Indiana Jones Adventure. I mean, his influence spanned many, many, many years at Disneyland and Epcot Center and all that. So,
and he was an artist aside from being a Disney artist as well. I know he spent a season with the circus and did a whole series of circus paintings. And there is at Cal Arts, there's a memorial scholarship fund named for Herb. So
there's the whole Ryman Arts program. Yeah.
Ryman Arts, yeah.
And John Hench, he did. Yeah, and John Hench did like the official portraits of Mickey Mouse for many years, and he, of course, there's books out there with some of his design advice and very big on colors. I can remember seeing him in Adventure. I was working, and he came in through Adventureland, and he had color swatches. And he was checking some things out, and because he stayed working there until like the day he died. He collapsed there the day he died. He stayed on board.
Died. Yeah. But he was the arbiter of all color. All color choices ended up going through John, and I know he and Marty were kind of overseeing this whole development of Epcot, and John was very much the arbiter of the artistic choices, and Marty was making the more logistical decisions. And I was just doing my thing and having a fine time, going to meetings without, really being aware of what a rare opportunity it was, because it just was the way it was.
Right.
Although, when I did, sometimes my friends and I, we'd go to the studio to have lunch because their food was better. And we'd always make sure we had time to go walk the back lot because it was still there. Mm-hmm. And having grown up in the 50s, when you got to the end of the back lot, you were in Zorro's Fort. And I was in heaven in Zorro's Fort. So that was like a dream come true for 5-year-old me.
Well, they filmed a lot of movies on that in the sound stages and backlot back then.
Yes, they did.
Mary Poppins and tons.
There was the house, the Ugly Dachshund house was right next to the Summer Magic house, and then you went through Passamaquoddy, and then you kind of came down the Western Street and ended up in Zorro's Fort.
Wow.
And
it's a shame. All that's gone.
It's all gone. Yeah. There were pieces of Herbie lying all over the place.
Oh.
Not Herbie the car, not Herb Ryman, right? So.
Right, Herbie the Love Bug.
That's right. That's right.
Herbie the Love Bug.
We were talking about Herb Ryman earlier. I didn't want any confusion there.
No, not that Herbie. Not that Herbie. No.
Yeah, that was quite the backlot. That was if you were a fan of Disney movies, that was quite the backlot. Where it's a shame that it's gone now, but I guess that's just the nature of the business. But oh my gosh, you would walk around and, hey, that's from this movie, and that's from this movie, and wow.
Yep, very recognizable. And if you kind of went the other way toward the back, there was the big softball field from Moochie of the Little League. So that was from Mickey Mouse Club, as I remember. And then sometimes I'd go visit the archives, which was cool. I got to touch the Oscar with the 7 little Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
That was before, everybody did white gloves to touch things.
Yeah.
But
Snow White and the
Dave
Seven
Smith
Dwarfs.
was doing such a wonderful job. Yeah. such a wonderful job.
Well, did your research ever take you to the archives then?
No, because
mean-
I wasn't researching anything Disney.
Okay.
I researched American Adventure. I researched things for Communicore. I did a lot of research for a film they ended up not doing on international festivals. I did like straight up background show research. Disneyland statistical research, ride capacity, how many people rode it, et cetera, for a year.
Yeah.
When Ronald Reagan was elected, they needed to add him to the Hall of Presidents, so they handed that to me, and I had to call his transition team and find out, what size was his suit, what his the preference for the cut of his suit, what color tie did he want,
Wow.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't need to get any pictures or anything. I mean, that was easily available, and Blaine was sculpting the head, but we did have to clothe and proportion the body correctly. So I had to call his transition team and get all that information for those who put that together.
I wanted to ask you back to, we were talking about some of the people that worked with Walt Disney that you were able to work with. Do you ever remember any particular stories that they told you about Walt Disney?
I remember some of the stories. I won't tell you who told it on whom.
That's fine.
But I do remember one gentleman who was telling a story on another gentleman, and they were apparently both at Walt's house. And Walt someone had gifted him with an elephant, a good luck elephant of some kind that was made of ivory, which is not politically correct at this time because, of course, it comes from endangered animals. But at that time, it wasn't particularly thought about. And it was a good luck charm, and it was filled with, I don't know, 100 or so little tiny carvings of elephants. And this person who was the butt of the joke picked it up and somehow fumbled it and dropped it, and all the little elephants went everywhere.
Oh, no.
So he was responsible for losing Walt's luck, I was told.
Oh, no.
And I looked at him and I said, "It didn't work, did it?" And he said, "No, I guess not." I didn't notice Walt lost any luck.
Yeah.
John Hench was telling me once about animating the goldfish in Fantasia and trying to get the sparkle effects in the water. And he said he ended up doing a paper rubbing on some stucco, and that kind of he liked it, and that's what he used as his inspiration for the sparkle effects in the water for the goldfish of Fantasia. I remember thinking at the time, I need to write all this down. And I thought, why would I write all this down? And now I try to remember and think, why didn't I write all that down?
Yeah.
Well,
understandable.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Well,
did you do anything? I know they ramped up for Tokyo Disney as well. Were you there? Were you around for that, or did they not?
I was still
they probably
there,
didn't do nearly as
but
much research.
Yeah, I didn't really work on Tokyo Disney because I was working on what became Downtown Disney at Disneyland and the Disney Channel. The partnership they were originally going to have with Time Warner, which they went as far as having a big celebration of some kind after hours at Disneyland, but then everything fell apart and they went off on their own without Time Warner. But it was things like that after Epcot opened, and I actually had a baby kind of in there right in the middle, and came back, and then I was doing that kind of stuff, and I really didn't work on TDL because it didn't require show research per se.
Right.
I had
'cause
friends
there
that
was
worked on it.
copies
but-
of it. Yeah. They kind of copied from Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom, so they probably didn't need as much research.
Wow.
But they had lots of money.
Yeah. They did.
Yeah. It's great when you can get somebody else to pay to build a Disney park, That's great.
Well, and to pay to bill it really well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and operate it well too. So. Yeah. I mean that's pretty
there
crazy
was-
because at the time, you think about it. Okay, you had Disneyland, and then you had the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, and then it's like, okay, so we've got 2 theme parks in the company, and now we're going to work on building 2 more theme parks. One of them, really big and different from the others, and that's just an incredible time where you're doubling the number of Disney theme parks in the world, basically simultaneously. What a time.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It really was. And, I look back on that as a very magical and unique experience. And I later became a teacher and a school librarian, and I tell my kids about it.
Oh, wow.
Have a dream. You never know.
Yeah.
Look where it can take you.
So you left the company in '83, is that correct?
I did.
Yeah.
And I stayed home. I actually stayed home with my kids for 15 years.
Oh, nice.
And then I started teaching middle school.
Huh.
And I have many degrees, so I taught many things. I ended up being a school librarian and retired from that. It'll be 4 years ago in June. But I went back, before I retired, to Cal State Long Beach, which is where I had taught economics, except now I teach in the Graduate School of Education.
Oh.
I teach librarians, school librarians. So, in my youth, I taught in the economics department on lower campus, and here in my age, I teach at the very top of the hill in the Graduate Department of Education.
Nice.
And so you were home with the kids for 15 years. Now, you can always share with us any stories about the kids that without telling us which one you're telling on. So, no, I'm just...
They would know.
Yeah.
When was
Well,
the-
Lynn and I
who-
are... Go ahead.
I would say they're the ones who destroyed the paper cover on my Frank and Ollie book.
Oh, no.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's the thing about if you've got a nice Disney collection and you start having kids or pets or whatever around it, it's like I've got to put it somewhere where it's not going to get destroyed. Yeah.
Because, the pictures.
Yeah.
I want to look at the pictures.
When was the last time you were at Disneyland?
Just before it closed. And then I was at, I was at Walt Disney World in February doing a Run Disney,
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
which I walk.
Yeah.
My sister and I walk the Run Disney.
My
It rained.
goodness.
It was very adventurous. Yeah, I have. That's been one of my hobbies since I retired. I have probably 20 5K medals,
Nice. Very good.
most of them Disney. Yeah.
You do realize we've got automobiles now, right?
Oh, highly
Sorry,
overrated.
that's always what I say to people who run distances. It's like, come on now, we got automobiles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I walk distances.
there you go. Walking's good.
Well,
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to do a swim Disney because I was always a swimmer. So I don't know if they can get us into the sub lagoon or something, but I want to swim Disney.
Well, I don't think you want the lakes at Walt Disney World. You'd have to compete with the alligators, so I think I'd pass on that.
Yeah.
Get your times up. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Melissa. I really appreciate it. It's really fun hearing all those stories.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, well, that concludes episode 282 of the Sweep Spot Podcast.
282. All right.
Well, that was great.
Well, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, and it was kind of interesting to hear. We've all heard of these names most of the names that she mentioned. She mentioned earlier in the interview about, Randy Bright. I don't know a whole lot of, you probably do, but a whole lot of work that he did, but I know him from his book that I love.
Yeah, the Inside Story. Yeah.
Right. But it was really neat to hear all these names and people that she was able to work with that we've heard in tons of other projects. So, thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on. Appreciate it. And I wanted to mention a few things here before we go, just kind of a repeat, but please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be really cool to get a lot more people subscribed on there, and join in on the live streams. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. That way, some people don't have social media, but I think let's go ahead and plan. It may not happen, but let's plan on next Friday at 7 Pacific time. And we'll see what happens. But check it out and see. But I think we're going to go with that. So we'd love for you to be involved in these chats that we have. Last time we had a plan, and we're going to talk about the new tomorrow, or new ideas for tomorrow and what they could possibly do. And as my friend commented, the conversation really picked up when when we brought up Pooh. Not Winnie the Pooh, but Pooh. So, yeah. So, you never know what will come up in these conversations. They were a lot of fun. So, join us for those.
True.
Go to our website. We have T-shirts. We have books. We have everything there. The Patreon links. But just thank you so much for listening. Tell a friend. You can find us anywhere on where podcasts are found. We're even on Spotify now. We're on TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, YouTube now. I'm gonna like I mentioned earlier, I think I'm gonna try to start putting all the recent, as soon as we put out a podcast episode, I'm gonna put it on YouTube. So check all that out.
Yeah, just let people know. Let them know that we're here. Because you just tell other people that we're here so we can grow the audience, and then you can talk with them about the latest episode.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. Hang in there, and we'll talk to you next time.